Good afternoon and welcome back to Dynamics365 Finance and Operation. We're actually continuing our journey to configure the human resource module. So I've talked quite a bit about a bunch of different things like the leave of absence, a bit of a leave of absence, some compensation. We haven't actually configured any of that. So because they're different modules, so we're going to try to link those things together once we complete the setting up of an employee first, and then we'll go into the process as we try to configure the compensation, assign the compensation, and I'll talk a little bit more about how you even do that. Same thing with leave of absence, it's a separate module, and same thing with benefits management. So we talked about payroll and benefits in my previous video, and we're going to continue talking about the compliance and some of the general features that you may need to know when you want to configure the human resource module for an employee. So today's video is going to be a little bit short because I want to keep things consistent as we're going through this module, and there's a lot to talk about. Of course, once we start configuring it, I'll talk more about my personal experience that I have witnessed as I configured and implemented the system for the HR. So under compliance, it's very intuitive. What it says is basically a very small feature within the finance and operation where you can put cases together. So an incident case, for instance, so you can create it. You don't need to really configure anything. It's readily available for you. So you can select an employee like Ahmed Barnett here if you want to do view cases, any cases that are related or any incidents that were occurred on this employee during the work hours. For instance, if this guy is a warehouse associate, something fell on it or fell on his foot, for instance, or he got injured, you create a test case or an incident case here. And there are a few options available up here just to make sure that everything is captured within the system, just in case. WSIB, for instance, in Canada are the ones that take care of taking care of the employees in the back warehouse and whatnot. So they tend to come in if there is something reported, more or less like an injury. So they do come in and ask for records, and they interview a lot of people who were around that area at that point when that employee got injured. So from an HR perspective, you can do this. You don't need to really configure anything. Uh, Everything is so more or less configured. The only thing that I would say you need to configure is a case ID. I believe that would be in the number sequences. So we talked about number sequences and how you want to configure that. Apart from that, you simply create a new case, give it a name, description, the status, and they'll go through the status as what has been completed according to the actual incident. And accommodations, so that's another compliance. If you click on accommodations, as you could see, not much of a detailed accommodation that you would have liked within the system. I know Workday is a very HR specific, and it has a lot more capabilities, but Workday is very expensive to implement. And the pricing, of course, that's why a lot of people, a lot of organizations try to go for finance and operation. But accommodations in this case is it's very simple. So one of the best accommodation that I've seen in my implementation is for anyone who's fasting, for instance. So you want to make a record here for anybody from the HR who have access to the employees' records and whatnot, and they can go into accommodation and see okay what other accommodations they have. A disability can be also considered an accommodation, and here you don't really need to configure it. You simply just create a new one, give an accommodation type and a job task. It's irrelevant actually to have a job task here, but you can create job tasks, for instance, for that accommodation. Moving on to injury and illness. So this actually go hands in hand with cases. So injury and illness incidents. I haven't really created an incident here, but there has a lot more information that you can put together. So if I were to click new, you see the case number has been already assigned. So this is coming from the number sequence. Case description. So basically, tie down to the case that you created, date and time of the incident to your best knowledge, injury type, so you can configure that actually. Actually, no, I think this is basically a drop-down menu for now, but you should be able to configure this by going into the injury and illness. Yeah. So you simply create a new one here, and you can select it from this drop-down menu. Body part, of course, you want to specify which body part was injured and the outcome type. So outcome type, what was the outcome of that injury? What came out of it? I actually did witness a death for a company that I was implementing the system for. They were a construction company, and in the middle of the project, as we were implementing this, I kind of introduced this piece of it. And a couple of days after, there was a huge incident where an employee actually passed away. So it was due to the serious injury that took place while they were doing the construction work, and it was unfortunate. So those things do happen, and you can capture all of that in the system, and just for the future reference as well. So it's always good to know the worker and their position and supervisor all obviously needs to exist here, and then you can put that in there. More detail on what kind of an incident is. I'm not going to go through every single one because I think it's very self-intuitive for you to basically read this through and be able to understand it. And the cost associated with it, I don't think you would need to worry about the cost, at least for that incident. There wasn't much of a cost behind that. I know that there would have been some legal issues there, but that is for the organization to kind of figure out because uh, I wasn't in that project for that long. Like we kind of completed a project prior to even the using this feature for that particular employee. Okay, so let me actually delete this because it's not going to let me go through until I fill the other information up. And we talk about accommodations, we talked about the injury illness. So that's pretty much it for the compliance. It's not a lot, but just enough for the HR to actually keep a record in the system. And in terms of time, I actually haven't used time because there's no time and attendance within the finance and operations. So you obviously need to have an ISV solution, which is basically a third-party vendor who offer a time and attendance, which you need to get integrated. So you would need integration between the time and attendance and the employee and with the HR module itself. So a lot of times, the time and attendance is taken care of outside of the finance and operation. It's just not worth the investment, the time for the organizations to do it, to basically have a seamless back and forth integration. It's usually one way, or sometimes it's just taking care of it on the outside. In F&O sends information like basic information like the name of the employee, the position number, their personnel number, um, and the supervisor, etc. So these are the things that I have actually configured and integrated with other ISV solutions, and that's the most you would do as a functional consultant from my from my experience. So not much here I can talk about, to be honest. There's not that it's basically not, I wouldn't say useful, but it is something that you won't use at all in finance and operations. So with that, I think I'll close up our conversation and then we'll start talking about the project, a bit about commerce, and we'll try to fly through all of these tabs on top so we can at least start learning about the real stuff where we're going to configure like compensation, benefits, and leave of absence and how we assign that to employees.